Hey, welcome back to a new installment of the Wide Right Podcast. Manny Navarro here from The Athletic, joined today by Adam Lichtenstein of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Adam, the last time we had you on the show, it was preseason. We were getting ready for, I think, camp. And now we're 3 games into the regular season. It's Tuesday, September 17th, around 4 o'clock. Miami's 3-0, getting ready to go to USF. And it feels like, Adam, maybe I'm wrong, feels like Mario Cristobal has done it. He's gotten Miami back to looking like the Hurricanes used to look when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can't talk about when you were a kid, but but they looked like a little bit when I was a kid, around the, turn of the century, around 2000, 2001, and they look really good. I mean, I don't it's there's only so many ways to say it. They look really good. And sure, their opponents haven't been amazing, Florida A&M and Ball State and, a not so great Florida team, but they did what there was no slow starts really. There was no not too many really dumb mistakes. They just came out. They, as Mario would say, they did their job and they did what they should do against those teams. They beat up on them.
Yeah, they are slapping people around the way the old school Miami teams used to do it regularly. They're not taking any Saturdays off, at least not yet, and they look dominant. So that's very, very encouraging because that's really what Mario was brought back to do here at Miami. Canes are a 16 and a half point favorite, according to BetMGM, going into Saturday's game in Tampa, 7 p.m. I've been away from the team since Gainesville. I got COVID. I literally tested positive for COVID, Adam, the day of the FAMU game. Saturday morning, woke up, went to go play some pickleball, lost taste in my mouth, lost sense of smell and tested positive. So I've been on the IR, so to speak, for a week. But I've been watching from my couch, watching all of college football. A lot going on in the ACC, a lot going on in the state of Florida. The Seminoles haven't won a game yet. Florida Gators talking about firing Billy Napier. We're going to get into all of that later. But I wanted to start with the team because we are at the quarter mark of the regular season, and there's some impressive numbers, Adam, that I wanted to just go over. Um, First of all, uh, just from a news standpoint for this week, Miami is getting Jalen Rivers and Inez Cooper back this week. Rivers hasn't played since the opener at Florida. Kind of got a little bit of a rest. Inez Cooper got nicked up in the Ball State game, but positive news going into Miami into that game for Miami that both of those guys are expected back. Can you talk about that a little bit, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Cooper and Rivers are two really key guys. I mean, they're starters obviously on the offensive line. Rivers really an anchor at left tackle. Could have gone guy who could have gone to the NFL last year, came back. Cooper, one of those project offensive linemen who Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal have turned into a really, really solid piece at right guard. Luckily, their injuries didn't seem too severe. They're coming back this week. Markel Bell was the one playing in Rivers' place the last 2 weeks. He's done pretty all right. I think the first week he had a pretty poor pass blocking grade, according to Pro Football Focus. But the coaches have been, praising him and his effort the last 2 weeks. He hasn't been a liability, I don't think. They brought in Lou Cristobal to play in Cooper's place last week against Ball State. He didn't grade out super well, but obviously it's Ball State, you know, wasn't a major issue. And they ended up pass blocking, run blocking, just fine. So, but it's good to have your starters back, especially for, when you take an uptick in opponent in USF who, they may not be power five or power four, but they're still a decent team.
Yeah, definitely one of the best group of five teams. Again, we're going to talk about the Bulls in a bit, but that was sort of the big news, I think, out of the press availability this week. Still no word, I think, on Ruben Bain, right? I kind of projected he wouldn't be back until the Virginia Tech game. I think Damari Brown might be a little bit longer than that from what I've heard. But what's your take on the situation with other injuries?
Yeah, I realized because someone mentioned it to me in my Twitter mentions after Mario's press conference on Monday. Does anyone ask about Bain? How's Ruben Bain? I'm like, nobody asked, which was an oversight, I guess, on our part. But yeah, I kind of have the same read as you. Ruben Bain, nothing definite on him. Probably not going to be back. I would expect until ACC play. Damari Brown, TBD. And then yeah, after that, I mean, they're pretty healthy other than those guys.
You wrote a story this week about Francis Mauigoa, graded out as the ACC Offensive Player of the Week. I know Mario said he's turning into one of the best players in the country. He was already a freshman All-American last year. He's the highest rated offensive lineman in the ACC according to Pro Football Focus, 16th overall among all FBS offensive tackles who've played a minimum of 100 snaps with an 80.3 PFF grade. When you look at this offensive line across the board, it's amazing that the offense, and we're going to talk about some of the numbers this offense has put out, but essentially you don't have Jalen Rivers for games 2 and 3. You're going with Markel Bell. You have Inez Cooper leave in the middle of the Ball State game. You had Ryan Rodriguez, who was your starting left guard against Florida, get hurt. So now you're throwing Matthew McCoy out there full time. I was worried coming into the season about the offensive line a little bit. I thought maybe the depth wouldn't last. So far, I guess at least inferior competition, it hasn't been an issue. And Francis has been, I think, like we said, the best offensive lineman in the ACC.
Yeah, yeah. On the depth side of things, I mean Matthew McCoy. I haven't really written about him, but if you look at like his run blocking grade, it's like one of the best in the country in the time he's played. I think he's got like an 86 or something like that in
Mhm.
run blocking. So he's obviously filled in with no issue at left guard. And yeah, Francis Mauigoa just I mean what more? I mean you expect everyone expected him to be good. 5-star prospect, top 10 player, and last year. So here's the thing that really has caught my attention about what they call him CC. What's caught my attention is that I remember from the first couple of weeks last year, he had a bunch of penalties. I think he had 4 penalties in the first his first
Yeah.
2 games. And he's a freshman. It's not that crazy. I think he had 9 total penalties last year, which led the whole offensive line in penalties. And nothing kills a drive faster than a badly timed holding penalty. This year so far through 3 games, not a single penalty, no holds, no false starts, nothing.
Yeah.
Which shows, the kind of step in maturity he's taken, the growth he's had. It's really impressive. So, and he's also not allowed a single quarterback pressure, not, no hurries, no sacks, nothing, through 3 games so far. And again, 2 of those games are FAMU and Ball State, but still, not a single, no one's getting past him. He's got
Yeah.
a great run blocking grade. If you look at like his PFF grades, he's not the top pass blocker in the conference. He's not the top run blocker in the conference, but he's good at both. Which not everyone is. He's been very good at both so far, and that's what I think pushes his PFF grade so high, to the top of the pack in the ACC so far. So just a really all around, great offensive lineman. He's growing into kind of what everyone thought he'd be.
Yep, yep. And the offensive line's done phenomenal work. We're going to go over some of these numbers, Adam, that kind of opened my eyes when I looked them up today. Miami leads the country with 32 plays of 20 yards or more through their first 3 games. Last year, the Hurricanes had 68 such plays. So we're a quarter of the way there, and they are only 36 behind last year's total through 13 games. Miami's on pace to finish with 128 plays of 20 yards or more. LSU last season led the country with 107 plays of 20 yards or more. What do you think of those numbers?
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that's what, they say Cam Ward's a hell of a drug. He's he's I mean, like their offense, it's really good. I mean, it's hard to say a lot more than that, but when you take Cam Ward, who's a great quarterback, he's got like the best marks I think of any quarterback on PFF right now.
Yep.
And you take the receivers, guys like Restrepo and Jacoby George have had their share of big plays. The tight ends have had their share of big plays. Elijah Lofton with a 40-yard touchdown last week. Arroyo's got, I think, 1 or 2 touchdowns. McCormick has a touchdown, though. I guess that wouldn't be considered an explosive play in the first game. It was like a 9-yard touchdown, but they've got their offense is really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Even though the running game has kind of taken a back seat, right? The first couple games, they've been kind of doing everything right. Chris Johnson gets in the mix last week with that, catch and run and just everything. Everything's coming up Miami so far.
Yeah. Ward ranks fourth nationally in QB rating. He's number two in passing yards with 1,035, leads the country with 11 touchdown passes, and is third with 11.6 yards per pass attempt. 15 different receivers have caught a pass from Miami through their first 3 games. Xavier Restrepo leads the way with 14 for 263 yards and 4 touchdowns. 4 receivers have over 100 yards receiving through the first 3 games, and 4 have double-digit catches. So distributing the ball around to different targets, I think, is what really makes this offense unique because I feel like, Adam, when I watch other teams, I don't want to say that they're just led by one dude, but like you look at NC State, right? It's like, well, they got KC Concepcion, okay? You look at other teams across the country. Maybe they've got 2 guys, 3 guys. The fact that you've got 15 different dudes who have caught a ball already is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's that depth and roster building because, like you said, I mean, look at the best teams in the country. Look at Ohio State. They've got, I mean, they probably have 20 guys who can, create an explosive play at wide receiver. At your Alabamas, Georgias, Texas. They always load up on these dudes who can make plays, and that's kind of where Miami's getting. I feel like maybe the last 2 years or so, you would think, okay, if Restrepo's not open, well, Restrepo's the go-to guy. But
Right.
now it doesn't have to be all him. He doesn't have to be 1,000 yard receiver this year, even though he might end up being one again. Because Jacoby George is, a very good receiver. Sam Brown's a good receiver. The tight ends are getting open and making things happen in the passing game. The running backs are making things happen in the passing game. So there's a lot of options. They're very deep, well and very well rounded at the skill positions.
Miami doesn't have a player ranked in the top 100 in rushing. And I think if I said that stat to you prior to the season, you'd probably freak out. You'd be like, what the hell's going on? This is a horrible season for Miami. How could they not? How could Damian Martinez not even be ranked in the top 100 in rushing? But the reality is, this team is averaging 204 rushing yards a game and 6 yards a carry. And I think the best thing about this is that Damian Martinez, he only had 3 carries against Ball State. He is fresh, and one thing I've repeated over and over again, whether it's on this podcast or when I go on Big O Show or when I do Channel 7, when I do my Sports Extra hits on Sunday nights, is this is a team that's looking to play 14, 15, 16 games this year. You need to stay fresh. You need players to their bodies to feel good. So when you get Jalen Rivers sitting out for 2 games, you get Ruben Bain basically playing one series in the first month of the season, uh, you're gonna be fresh come late December, early January. You're not?
No, I agree. And I was about the running game. I made a joke on Twitter during the Ball State game because they ran like 8 times in the first half. And I was like, I made an office reference where I'm like, why run ball when pass ball do trick?
Yeah.
The passing game's been excellent. So I mean, Shannon Dawson, he has air raid roots and he gets to he has the quarterback this year. He has the receiver. So, fling the ball around. But like you said, staying fresh is so important, especially for running backs. I mean, and Miami has a stable, with whether it's Damian Martinez or Mark Fletcher, who, I think quietly averaged like 9 yards a carry last week. Jordan Lyle's been getting a bunch of snaps. He has a couple touchdowns. AJ Allen comes into the game in the second half last week, and what does he do? And but break off like not, two huge runs in
Yep.
his first 2 carries, maybe of the season, if I'm remembering right. Scores a 55-yard touchdown. So they're keeping guys fresh in these games that they should win and they need to win, but where they can rotate these guys in and keep guys fresh, they're doing it.
Yep. Before we move on to defense, one little tidbit of news from earlier today: Malachi Tony, wide receiver, commitment in the 2026 class is reclassified to 2025. And I know when you look at their recruiting class, Adam, I think Miami was 12th coming into today. I don't know what it ranks now with Malachi Tony added into the mix. I think they're 11th. They moved up a spot with Tony part of the class. They've got 22 commitments in total, according to 247 Sports Composite. But Tony is a talented kid from American Heritage. I think right now he's classified as the 25th best receiver. I would say that was the one position when you looked at Miami's recruiting this cycle that was kind of missing a dude, but I'm guessing they probably knew all along this was a possibility. They could add Tony into this class, and that kind of gives them a boost and fills a need for them.
Yeah, I really like Tony. I've seen him play a few times, since he was a freshman, and now I guess he's a senior, so time goes quickly. But yeah, he's a really good player. Really, an explosive guy at wide receiver. I like what he can do. I'm excited. I'm excited to get a chance to watch him play maybe a little bit more this year. Maybe make that more of a priority now that he's a 2025 kid, not 26. But yeah, I mean, their recruiting class I think is gonna. I mean, if they keep winning like this, we've seen Mario Cristobal bring in a top five class when the team wasn't that good. So you add winning into the mix. I think these last maybe couple months before early signing day could be pretty fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are certainly interested in Miami that are committed elsewhere right now. DJ Pickett, I think, is sort of the biggest apple dangling from the tree. Five-star defensive back. He's committed to LSU. Of course, his cousin is already on the team. Booker Pickett as a true freshman. That's a guy they're looking to flip. I think Dallas Wilson, another five-star wide receiver from Tampa Bay Tech, is a guy who's been committed to Oregon. They've had a flirtation with him. Josh Moore, a four-star wide receiver, goes to West Broward right here close to my house. He's been committed to Florida. They're all these guys that I think they could potentially flip here down the way. But it'll be an interesting storyline to watch. A lot of guys are definitely coming to watch this team. in person and taking visits to Miami games and being around the program because, like you said, they're winning right now. So I think it's going to be I think a lot of positive things are in store for the Hurricanes if this continues.
Yeah, I do think DJ Pickett and Dallas Wilson end up in Miami's class, and that is based on absolutely nothing. No,
Right.
nothing. Just pure gut vibes. That's not a, I don't know. It's just a feeling. I've
Yeah.
had that feeling for, a year now, probably, give or take,
Right.
based on nothing. Just a pure gut feeling.
Pure gut. Pure gut.
Yeah.
Um, well, look, let's talk a little bit about the defense because I feel like Lance Guidry, this is the unit I was most worried about coming into this year was the secondary. I think everybody kind of was. And they've been outstanding. And a big part of that, obviously, has been the pass rush. Tyler Barron's been playing like a maniac, 4.5 sacks, a bunch of tackles for loss. But look, they rank sixth in total defense in terms of yards per game, 10th in yards per play, 3.56 per play. The opponent passer rating is fifth nationally in the country. No touchdown passes allowed, six picks. Teams are only averaging 4.3 yards per pass attempt, was just ridiculous number. The rush defense is 12th in yards per game. 25th in yards per rush attempt, which is 2.7 yards per attempt, and they're also +5 in the turnover margin. It's ridiculous to me, Adam, how good the defense has been. Now, look, I know the Gators don't have a tremendous offense. I know that Ball State isn't loaded on offense, and FAMU not necessarily either. But for them to dominate with, I would say, without Ruben Bain, with a bunch of new transfers in, and then a true freshman in OJ Frederick at cornerback. I don't know about you, but I'm almost more impressed with what the defense has done than even the offense.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, you said it all with, you rattle off those stats, like they're all fantastic. You would think, I mean, again, Ball State, FAMU, I would hope the defense would lock those teams down regardless. But Florida, I mean, yeah, they've been pretty bad to start the year, but Graham Mertz is still, a veteran quarterback who is capable. They
Yeah.
have capable wide receivers there, Eugene Wilson and Elijah Badger and those guys, and they shut them down too. They did nothing. They got a couple picks, and um, so they've done all that you could ask for and more. And like you said, with Ruben Bain out, with Damari Brown out since week one, they're still everyone. It's kind of that next man up mentality they always preach. OJ Frederick's been fantastic as a freshman. Not even as a freshman who's been on campus since January. He only got here in the summer. Um, the fact that he's able to adjust and get in and become a quality contributor so fast is impressive. Daryl Porter still, quietly one of the ACC's top cornerbacks. Like it's not even like he's reeling in all these picks. He's just guys don't really pick on him because the guy's always covered. Uh, Jaden Harris and Meach Powell have all done very well. I mean, kind of like the offense, everyone's performing. That defensive line. I asked Lance Guidry and Mario Cristobal about it on Monday. Like, they feel like they only have to rush four guys. They don't need to bring extra pressure with, which their linebackers can do. Um, but they feel like they don't have to because it feels like Tyler Barron or Simeon Barrow or, Elijah Alston or someone's always in the quarterback's face and forcing a pressure.
Yeah, if you look at the PFF stats, Tyler Barron's got 12 quarterback pressures on 59 pass rushing attempts. I mentioned the 4.5 sacks already for the season. He's just been an absolute monster. I think if you had to pick a team MVP on defense to this point, it would have to be Tyler Barron, right?
I mean, yes, but but like we were just talking about, I mean, you could pick five guys and it would probably
Yeah,
make sense because they've all been playing so well. I mean,
yeah,
but yeah, it would be Tyler Barron. I mean, this guy's been a revelation. And a great pass rusher. And again, he's doing this all. I mean, they're doing all of this without Ruben Bain, who you
hmm
would think coming into the year might be their best pass rusher and their best defensive lineman, and he's played three plays.
yeah.
Um, so it really it I thought the defensive line would be good. I knew the transfers they brought in were solid. But I mean, I didn't expect this. I think what Tyler Barron had 6 sacks all last year, and he's got 4.5 already. Like he's
Yeah.
playing like a madman.
Yes. By the way, I just looked at the list on PFF. 40 guys have gotten in on defense for Miami this year. You know who's played the fewest snaps? Ruben
Ruben
Bain.
Bain. Yeah.
Three.
If
Three.
you had told us that a month ago, we'd be like, oh my God, like they maybe not in trouble because the defensive line, like I said, I thought was deep, but like
Right.
the fact that they're playing so well without arguably their best defensive player is good, is really good for it really says a lot about the team.
This week will be a different challenge, obviously with USF. I want to just transition to talking about the Bulls for a minute. They're 2-1, coming off a win over Southern Miss. We mentioned they've played Alabama twice, tough in the last 2 years. They ended up losing to the Crimson Tide 42-16 a couple weeks ago in Tuscaloosa, but it was a game close in the fourth quarter. Byron Brown, super impressive, mobile quarterback, a kind of guy who can give you nightmares. I know Lance Guidry spoke about, the way that their offense run. You got to protect them like every guard against every single blade of grass because they're going to spread you out everywhere. But I will say this in my own sort of evaluation of USF and looking at their team, Byron Brown has not been throwing the football all over the field. They've been running it and having success running the ball, but I think he's only got two or three touchdown passes to this point. I look at their receivers; they're not necessarily extremely dangerous. Sean Atkins, a former walk-on, is their leader. It's not like there's a bunch of guys, tearing things up in the in the offensive receiver room. So I think for Miami, the number one thing this week is going to be tackling and making sure you bring a guy like Byron Brown down. He's a big physical quarterback, but it's not one of those challenges that I think is impossible. What's your read on this game for Miami and what they have to do defensively?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a step up in competition. Like USF, like we said earlier, is a good G5 team. Byron Brown is a playmaker. He's won the Heisman, I think, twice in my, CFB 25 dynasty. Like he's a Heisman guy in there, and he's a very good dual threat quarterback, a real true dual threat quarterback. Um, but it's not an impossible task. I mean, they're going to have to work on containing him, making sure he doesn't rush for 150 yards and two touchdowns against them. But that's a doable task, especially if, like I was saying earlier, if they can get pressure with four guys and have their linebackers play more of a containing role, like that's something that they're capable of doing. I mean, I think that it's a tougher test, but it's not, like you said, not a insane one. I mean, yes, like USF and Alabama the last 2 years have been weird games. And USF's played them crazy close. But that's a rivalry game, I guess, now. So you got to expect that. They did end up losing that game though, 42-16. Like they did lose that game.
Yeah.
I don't think USF, like people have been talking about them as a potential trap game. And yeah, possibly, especially with the fact that apparently USF has like 15,000 students who are planning to attend. They're opening up the whole stadium for them and everything. Like it'll be more difficult than if they had played USF 2 years ago, but it's not, an impossible challenge.
Yeah, not at all. And here's one stat on the USF defense from a Miami perspective. They've allowed 14 plays of 20 yards or more through their first three games. That's 94th, tied for 94th in the country, equal to NC State. And NC State hasn't exactly performed well. Wisconsin, Utah State, Maryland, Kansas State, Georgia State. I mean, that's who they're even with in terms of explosive plays allowed on defense. So Miami's obviously been super explosive. We detailed that earlier. I don't think they put a lot of pass rush either on opposing quarterbacks. I'm going to look up their sacks numbers as a team right now. They
Yeah,
are nine. They have 9 sacks, 16. They're 16th in the country. So I guess that's an okay number, but I wanted to actually look at who they've done that against. Three per game. So they had three against Alabama as well. So I guess it's an okay pass rush, but it's not a dominant thing where they're physically, it's not like Miami's going up against some physical machine.
yeah. Like the 60, the lines, what would you say? It was like 16 and a half.
Yeah.
That seems about right. If Miami comes out, wins this game 38-20, I think that's, a pretty decent showing from, maybe from really both sides, even if USF sticks with Miami a little bit. Um, if Miami comes out and wins this game 50-7, then okay, now we know Miami again, another show that shows Miami's legit. If they lose this game, obviously, or if they win this game 27-24, then that says another thing. So I think the 16 and a half point line is about right. And I think that's probably, I wouldn't be shocked if that's around where the game ends up. I mean, the people in Vegas, they know their stuff.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Florida Gators, Florida State Seminoles, and kind of what's been going on around the state in college football. USF got a big win last week. They're 3-0. They just finished beating TCU on the road. So Gus Malzahn, you could certainly argue, has the second best team in the state behind Miami. But the Gators and the Seminoles are in a really interesting position because I don't think I've ever seen it where both of them are down like this at the same time. Florida State, 0-3 to start the season. They were picked to win the ACC this year by the media. Florida is 1-2. We knew the Gators were going to be bad this year. We knew Billy Napier was probably going to be on the hot seat. They were only predicted to win 4.5 games. But to have this happening at the same exact time that Miami is sort of flourishing and hitting heights that it hasn't hit in a while, where expectations are through the roof and they're ranked number 8 in the country, it's created sort of I don't know, just a unique vortex, right? Where all of a sudden it's like if you're Miami, you're like, man, this life couldn't be better right now. From your perspective, what is your take on this whole story? What is it about Florida State and Florida's struggles that has caught your eye?
Well, first from the Miami perspective, like if you're Mario Cristobal, you got to have all the Florida and FSU commits that you want, have them on speed dial, and
Right.
not even say anything about you. Just like send them like the low lights from the last couple of weeks. Like, you sure you want to play here? And just have those guys on speed dial and stuff, or pinned texts and stuff. Yeah, no, it's a really uh bad situation for both of these teams. I mean, but first, starting off with Florida, just because I am a little more familiar with them, mainly because a lot of times because I have a group chat with my friends from college who have been decrying the state of Florida football for 2 years now, and many years before that too. Man, you got to fire Napier. I thought he might be done this weekend. When there were reports that there was a board meeting on Sunday, I think, and I thought, okay, well, this is it. Turns out it wasn't. He's still the head coach, but I think at this point it's a matter of when and not if that Billy Napier gets fired. By all accounts, he's a good dude, and I feel bad for him that it didn't work out. But I mean, they don't look good on the field. They're not recruiting well. There's nothing there. It's a husk. As as rough as it is to say, it's a husk. Like the team, I didn't watch the game really on Saturday against A&M, but I know they went down big early, and the team just seems like, and we saw it a bit in Gainesville when we were up there. The team just seems kind of lifeless.
Flat.
They're the thing that the thing that really caught me by surprise when we saw them in week one, is that it's year three for Billy Napier, and Miami is the team that looked like the SEC team.
Yeah.
Like the Gators in the trenches were just getting bullied. And the same thing happened with A&M with a coach in his first year, uh, just getting abused in the trenches. And that can't happen in year three of an SEC program. You just can't do that. Um, the team doesn't seem like there's anything there. I think it's over. Now the question is, you know, get the money for the buyout, line up who you want as your new head coach. I just think they're cooked.
Yeah, they're certainly cooked. I know everybody's been pointing to Lane Kiffin as a potential replacement for him, but I'm of the opinion that Lane Kiffin has a chance to win a national championship this year with what they've got going at Ole Miss. This is one of those scenarios where if I'm Florida, you need somebody to come in early December and nail in the next recruiting class. You need them to work in the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin may not be available to you till after January or till the middle
Yeah.
of January because if Ole Miss has a great season, they get to the Final Four, they're going to be playing into the first, second week of January. So I don't understand. Like I think while everybody can have their hopes and dreams of who can replace whatever said head coach they want to get rid of in Gainesville or even Florida State, the reality is the calendar in college football has changed things tremendously.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's no I was at a wedding, one of my friends from college, I was a groomsman at his wedding last year, and we were already talking about Napier getting fired then. This was like last October, and we talked about who we'd want to bring in, and I think the consensus and my preferred choice would have been Kalen DeBoer, but he's off the board now, so
Yeah.
there's real, and I don't know if there's any surefire, definite guys like that to bring in as a new head coach. I mean, Lane Kiffin, like, I mean, it may have been over a decade ago now, but he flamed out at the SEC job and at USC and at Tennessee. He flamed out of those jobs, or he left, I guess, Tennessee to go to USC. But the USC tenure didn't end well. He succeeded in more underdog roles at FAU and Ole Miss. Um, so I mean, I don't know if I don't think he's a surefire guy for Florida, even if they were to get him. But and then you look at FSU. I mean, they're not firing Mike Norvell because he's owed, I think, roughly $200 billion, give or take. Um, but that situation, I mean, talk about missing in the portal. You bring in DJU, that's not worked out. The running backs aren't doing well. The offensive line's not doing well. The receivers, no one's doing well. They're 0-3. Um, I mean, like kind of the same situation where it's like you just missed on these guys, and you got to wait till next year to kind of redo the roster again.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference is, and I've talked about this on this podcast and other places before. Mario Cristobal, while Mike Norvell did a great job identifying guys in the transfer portal who fit his team over the last 2 seasons, sprinkling in the right guys, adding a Johnny Wilson, right, adding a Keon Coleman, throwing in a Trey Benson. What helped him out was that he had Jordan Travis develop over really 4 years. He transferred in there as a second year player from Louisville. And so he had a quarterback. What happened was he never really recruited anybody to replace Jordan. And I think last year, they hire somebody who was at Oregon State. He comes over, says, "Well, let's go ahead and bring over our former Oregon State quarterback to lead the program." Well, that's not the guy, clearly, for FSU to lead them anywhere. Just not a good fit. And I think, it's completely imploded in Florida State's face. I don't think anybody expected the drop off to be this bad. I thought at the very least defensively they'd be able to lean on their defensive line to do a good job. And the reality is, Adam, they haven't given up a ton of points. 28 points, I think, was the most that they've given up to this point. In college football today, you give up 28 or less, you should probably at the very least be 2-1. But the
That
offense
that's
has just been
yeah.
so bad.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like, yeah, okay, you give up 20 points to Memphis. That's really not the end of the world. You should be able to score 3 touchdowns at home against Memphis. But the fact
Right.
that they just can't, I mean, like I mean, yeah, it all ultimately falls on the quarterback no matter what happens. That's just how that's just how football is that the quarterback gets the most attention. But just they don't have anything going for them. I mean,
They really don't.
DJU, I mean, like it's just been brutal. I mean, like missing. I didn't watch it. I didn't get a chance to watch much of the last 2 games, but well, actually, no, I did watch a decent bit of the BC game, but I didn't see much of this game. But I remember just watching him just overthrow guys in the end zone, what should have been easy touchdowns. Throws that a Cam Ward would have made probably. They just don't have it. And
Yeah.
that's the difference a quarterback makes. What if Cam Ward decided, oh, FSU was 13 and was a quarterback injury away from the playoff last year. I want to go to Tallahassee. I think if Cam Ward is there, they might be 3-0, and Miami might be in the rough spot right now. But
Right.
that's the way the transfer portal crumbles.
Yeah, who knew that that little delay of Cam Ward deciding to go to say he was going to enter the NFL draft completely changed FSU's fortunes, and Miami stuck it out. They kept waiting for him, right? They took Reese Poffenbarger, knew, hey, wait a minute, this guy could end up back, turning back around and coming to us if the NFL thing doesn't work out. And that's exactly what happened. They played their cards right, and that's why they have Cam Ward now, and the rest is history. But Adam, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ACC before I let you go. Grace Rayner and I do our power rankings every week for the Athletic. These will be coming out on Friday for us, but I can share the top 10. Doesn't look much different from last week's top 10, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this if we've got it right or wrong. We kept Miami number one, we kept Louisville number two, kept Clemson three, and Syracuse four. Of course, Louisville, Clemson, and Syracuse were on a bye week last week. California, we left at number five. They ended up beating San Diego State 31-10. Georgia Tech, we kept at six. They beat VMI 59-7. Boston College lost at Missouri 27-21, but we kept them right there at number seven. We didn't move anybody past them. We slipped Pittsburgh up from number nine to number eight. Pitt beat West Virginia 38-34 in the backyard brawl. They're 3-0. To me, they've kind of been the most interesting story so far in the ACC. North Carolina, we moved them back a spot. They fell from eight to nine. NC Central, they beat them 45-10, but North Carolina just doesn't look the way they need to look, I think, to be considered a serious threat, even at 3-0. And then Virginia Tech, we left them at number 10. They won at Old Dominion 37-17. So Miami, Louisville, Clemson, Syracuse, California, those are our top five. Are our top five right, Adam?
Yeah, I mean that seems about right to me. I mean, maybe it's just the fact that since I've been watching college football, basically Clemson's been a great team. That maybe I would put Clemson ahead of Louisville, um, just because they just absolutely vaporized App State, and I think App State's not too bad. But it's so early in the year. It's like it's basically they're kind of interchangeable. Um, Cal, I mean, number 5 in the power ranking is number
Yeah.
one in my Twitter poster heart.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
just hilarious memes on Twitter, but. Um, yeah, I mean they've been super impressive. Fernando Mendoza, a local kid from down here in South Florida, Jaden Ott, I know he didn't really have a great game. I think was it this past week or was it against Auburn where he didn't really
Well,
do a whole lot?
he's
He's
been
hurt.
banged up. He's been banged
Yeah,
up and limited. He hasn't really been on the field much at all. So, but
yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
not non-existent running game to this point.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued to see Cal in a couple weeks when Miami goes out there. But they weren't the team of the three new teams that I thought was going to be an ACC contender. But here we are 3 weeks into the year and they've beaten Auburn they're coming for FSU this week.
Yeah, they are. They are at +8 in the turnover margin, which is why I think Cal is as they're kind of reminding me a little bit of the 2017 Hurricanes, who had such a ridiculous turnover margin that's really what helped them.
Do they
Uh,
have a
um,
chain?
yeah, no, they don't have a chain at Cal though. I would imagine they've got to come up with something creative. Their Twitter following is that great, you know.
Yeah, they'll think of something.
They'll think of something. Big game this week, Georgia Tech at Louisville. You got NC State at Clemson. I'm curious, who do you take in those two matchups? Who are you taking this week?
Well, first, I've not been high on NC State. I didn't buy really into the preseason hype so much. I know Grayson McCall is hurt. Looks like they're going to start CJ Bailey, who I saw a
Hmm.
ton when he was playing at Chaminade Madonna. I don't know that he's college ready. So we'll see how he does. I think he got a chance to play a bit last week, but I didn't really see much of that game. Um, I'll take Clemson in that game. And well, first one was what was it? Georgia Tech
Georgia,
and Louisville.
Georgia Tech at Louisville. Georgia Tech, we have sixth in our poll playing Louisville. We have second in the ACC power rankings. Georgia Tech's
Yeah,
3-1.
yeah, I like Louisville on that one. It's at Louisville especially.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so in Kentucky, like I think Louisville is a pretty solid team. I think Georgia Tech is definitely improved, but I don't. I think maybe we all jumped on the bandwagon a little quickly after they beat FSU. Turns out that win's not as impressive as we thought it was.
right.
Um, I think they're definitely improved. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think Louisville's just a better team, so I'll take Louisville on that one.
All right. And the last thought on the ACC, Pittsburgh, three wins all of last year. They finished 3-9. They get Eli Holstein in from Alabama. That offense, completely different with the new coordinator. They beat West Virginia last week, 38-34. They come back from 3 touchdowns down the week previous to beat Cincinnati. Pat Narduzzi won this conference a couple of years ago. What are your thoughts on the Panthers, and do you think they're a legitimate threat this year because of what they've done the last couple of weeks?
Um, I don't know if they're a legit ACC threat. I think there's a lot of teams that are better than them.
Right.
Apparently the key for them is to fall behind because they were behind like what 27-6
Yeah.
against Cincy and they came back and won. And I think they were down I think they were down to West Virginia for a little while. They came back and won. So I guess the key is to fall behind. But I will say, I know they brought in the OC from West Carolina, and they brought in Desmond Reed from
Right.
West Carolina. Desmond Reed, a local kid from Miramar, right down, right in our backyards, right in Miami's backyard. Um, I just remember him tearing it up for Miramar. I mean, putting up some
Yep.
bonkers numbers when he was in high school. So glad to see him doing well. Also shout out to West Carolina. My brother-in-law is an alum from there. So
Oh,
shout out to
cool.
West Carolina. They future ACC power, West Carolina.
Yes, when conference realignment goes kablooey, which may not
Yeah.
be very long from now. Who knows when that's going to happen? Adam, listen, I appreciate you coming on, man. We had a good episode. I hope everybody gets a chance to read your stuff at the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, and they can follow you at LAAB Lichtenstein on Twitter. Anything you want to promote you're writing this week?
Yeah, I mean, just keep I'm gonna be plugging away all week. Every day, new stories, new content, new tweets. Obviously, just gonna be keeping it rolling. I can't believe we're like you said, we're already a quarter of the way through the year. I mean, we wait 9 months for a new college football season, and it goes by so fast. But I have a hunch that Miami were not quite a quarter of the way through. I think they're gonna play more than 12 games this year.
Yeah, I think you and I will probably be covering 14 or 15 games this year at this rate, the way things are
Yeah,
going with
no,
Cam Ward in this
no,
offense.
no jinxing anything, but I did tell my wife we were planning our anniversaries in January, so we try to take like a trip every January, and I was like, may have to do the end of January, early Feb, around there, not like January, like around New Year's, because I might be working still.
Yeah, you and I are going to be busy. Look forward to seeing you in Tampa this week. I'll be driving up there for that game, so I'll be back around, and then of course the ACC opener a week from this coming Friday against Virginia Tech. So we'll wrap up September, hopefully with some more competitive football games. But again, the way Miami is playing, who knows how things are really going to shake out. Adam, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.